From your philosophic point of view, to try to verbalize what your ideas have led you to so far, could you define the way you regard reality in this latter part of the 20th century? The way the United States of America is functioning?
Real heavy stuff. Makes me think of James Joyce saying that history is a nightmare from which I am trying to awake. Or Saul Bellow said, history is a nightmare in which I'm trying to get a good night's sleep. I think human beings have made somewhat of a nightmare out of their collective history. It seems to me that the last 5,000 years have been pretty awful. Cruelty, slavery, torture, religious fanaticism, ideological fanaticisms, and the new serfdom of industrialism. I think humankind probably made a big mistake when they gave up the hunting and gathering way of life for agriculture. Ever since then, most of us have led the lives of slaves and dependents. I rather look forward to the time when the industrial system collapses and we all go back to chasing wild cattle and buffalo on horseback. I think the human race has become a plague upon this earth. There are simply too many of us making too many demands on one defenseless little planet. I think human beings have as much right to be here as any other animal, but we have abused that right by allowing our numbers to grow so great and our appetites to become so insatiable that we are plundering the earth and destroying most other forms of life and threatening our own survival by greed and stupidity and this insane mania for quantitative growth, for perpetual expansion, the desire for domination over nature and our fellow humans. If it continues, we'll destroy life on this earth. The wilderness is vanishing. Next to go will be the last of the primitive tribes, the traditional cultures that still survive in places like the far north and the African and South American tropics. And if the whole planet becomes industrialized, technologized, urbanized, I would say that would be almost the worst disaster that can befall not only the planet, but human beings themselves. I think it would lead to the most awful kind of tyranny that some of our better science fiction writers have prophesied. I don't think we have to stay on this course. I think by virtue of reason, common sense, the evidence of our 5 good bodily senses, by daily living experience, we can imagine a better way to live, and there are fairly simple solutions. I would like to see the human race, beginning here in America, we should set the example. We have set the example for pillaging the planet. We should set the example for preserving life, including human life. And the means to do that seem fairly simple and available. Reduce human numbers gradually by normal attrition, letting the senile old farts like you and me die off. And after reducing the human population to a reasonable number, a self-sustaining number, maybe for the United States it would be something like 100 million or 50 million, should be plenty. And then also simplify our needs and demands so that we're not preying on other forms of life, plant life and animal life. And developing new attitudes, a reverence for all life, all forms of life. I consider myself almost an absolute egalitarian. I think that all human beings are essentially, in some essential way, equal, deserve equal regard or consideration. Certainly everyone differs in ability. Some people are bigger, stronger, some are smarter, some are more clever with their hands, others more clever with their brains. There's almost an infinite variation in talent and ability and intelligence among individual humans. But I think each of us, except perhaps the most depraved, violently, criminally insane generals and dictators, each of us in some essential way are of equal value. I would say in the eyes of God, except that I'm not a good Christian anymore. I think there's some other basis for this kind of egalitarianism. Just by virtue of being alive, living things, we deserve to be respected as individuals. And I'm saying that that respect for the value of each human being should be extended to each living thing on the planet. Our fellow creatures, beginning with our pet dogs and cats and horses. Humans find it easy to love them, and we should learn to love the wild animals, the mountain lions and the rattlesnakes and the coyotes and the buffalo and the elephants, and developing that way to extend our ability to love, to plant life. I think a tree, a shrub, deserves respect and sympathy as a living thing. And I think even go beyond that, to the rocks, to the air, and to the water, because it's all part of a whole, each part dependent on most of the other parts. And so we should, if only for our own self-respect and survival, learn to love the world around us. Go beyond the human and love the non-human, instead of simply trying to dominate it, subjugate it, enslave it, as we've been doing for the last 5,000 years, us Europeans and most Asiatics. Learn to live in some sort of harmony with it. Use what we must use. All living creatures have to feed on other living creatures, but do it at a reasonable level so that other things can survive along with us. I guess Albert Schweitzer was essentially right when he said we must learn reverence for all forms of life, even those we, out of necessity, have to perhaps hunt, kill, and eat.
How do you consider dealing with those who are antagonistic to life?
I think in the long run that life will destroy them. The destroyers are destroyed. The dictators and the insane militarists. In the meantime, though, before they destroy most of human life and planetary life, I suppose it becomes a process of education, trying to instill sympathy for life, other living things in our children. It begins as an individual, personal responsibility. Develop this love for life in ourselves, try to pass it on to our children, and try to spread it beyond the family as far as we can by whatever means are available to us. Teachers, writers, artists, scientists, propagandists, performers, politicians. A good politician is one with the ability to lead people toward this attitude. Would be. It's hard to think of any.